What's up, folks? This is the Core 3 from FightingGamesOnline.info, and I know it has been a very long time since I've dropped a new video on this channel, but to my own surprise, Capcom invited me to the second closed beta for Street Fighter 6, and so I thought, why not bring in the new year with a new first look? So as usual, I will talk about the origin of the latest Street Fighter, the feature and characters that were available, gameplay mechanics, and this shouldn't even have to be said, the online experience. So let's go back to August 3rd, 2021, where the final character for Street Fighter V Championship Edition was revealed. This character, which we now know today as Luke, would be represented as a glimpse into the future of the franchise, hinting that a new Street Fighter was currently in development. Fast forward to February 21st, 2022, and a teaser trailer featuring iconic Street Fighter veteran Ryu and our glimpse into the future were finally revealed to be the next chapter, Street Fighter 6. Now I want to roll back for a moment to focus on two main players in development of this new title who first officially introduced themselves in the Street Fighter V Summer Update for 2020. These two individuals were Takayuki Nakayama, the director of Street Fighter V, and Shuhei Matsumoto, the producer of Street Fighter V. And to no one's surprise, they are now the director and producer of Street Fighter 6. While Takayuki was there from the beginning of Street Fighter V's development, Shuhei was not, and I really wanted to point this out because there were some obvious shifts happening at this period in time. One of the biggest shifts was with Yoshinori Ono, who 2 years before this change was rumored to be demoted from the fighting game division at Capcom, with the senior producer of Monster Hunter, Raizo Tsushimoto, taking the helm. I mention this because it was also rumored that this demotion in particular was possibly not only due to the problems that plagued Street Fighter V's development, but issues that were also plaguing Street Fighter 6's development as well. Whether the rumors were true or not, there was an obvious improvement on the way things were being communicated to fans of Street Fighter V, and with the knowledge of Street Fighter 6 arriving in the near horizon, things seemed like they were moving in the right direction. So let's jump back to the summer of 2022, where we would get our first real taste of Street Fighter 6 in an announcement trailer. Right off the bat, there was a realization that this latest entry was going to be taking some big risks. One of the first things they showcased was an unknown character in different locations doing non-Street Fighter-like things in them. This was then followed up by gameplay also revealing new game mechanics and them showcasing initial cast members Ryu, Chun-Li, Luke, and newcomer Jamie. Capcom would also reveal Guile, the very funny game face feature, and their real-time commentary feature, bringing in well-known fighting game community members. An idea that was first seen in a little-known fighting game called Yatagarasu, which just happens to be the first look I did on this channel, by the way. In the coming months, they will reveal newcomer Kimberly, who to me seems like a hybrid of Guy and Buki, Juri, who was introduced in Street Fighter 4, Dalsim, Ihan, Blanca, and Ken, who were all introduced in Street Fighter 2. Just recently at the Game Awards, returning Super Street Fighter character DJ was revealed, along with newcomers JP, Marissa, and Manon, including a release date, something I will go over much later. We also got some details on game modes. There will be 3 main modes: Fighting Ground, World Tour, and Battle Hub. Fighting Ground has a lot of your classic modes like Training and Versus. World Tour is basically the story mode for the game, which was teased in the first announcement trailer, and Battle Hub, which functions like a virtual online lobby. So let's get into what came with the second beta. In terms of characters, Ryu, Chun-Li, Ken, Guile, Juri, Luke, Kimberly, and Jamie were available. There was only one main mode available, which was the Battle Hub, and within this mode we had access to other modes which included Training, Ranked Matchmaking, and Extreme Battle, just to name a few. When starting the game, you first go through customizing your avatar, starting with the generic character that you have probably seen in a couple of the trailers by now. Customizing your avatar is pretty involved in my opinion, and to be honest, I didn't quite feel like the end result fit what I was going for, but that is neither here nor there at this point. Later on in the beta, they opened a gear shop where you can get some accessories for your avatar, so all in all, decent experience, and this is just the beginning of the attention to detail they are putting into Street Fighter 6. After creating the avatar, I started their basic tutorial mode. I purposely lied and said I was new to the Street Fighter just to get the gist of what they were showcasing, and like with most tutorial modes, it was pretty bare bones. Nothing that was going to really dig into the strategy of fighting games, something I personally feel needs to be pushed in these modes a lot more. It even left out one of the game mechanics, which I thought was very odd. Now, normally I would wait to go into details about the presentation of Battle Hub, as it is connected to the online experience, but I just feel the need to get into them now because overall, I was very impressed about what this mode had to offer. From what I witnessed, there are several lobbies all housing 100 players at a time. It is also separated by region. At first glance, it looks like your run-of-the-mill virtual online mode where arcades are all around that lets you get into casual matches instantly, but there was definitely much more to it. One of the first things I regrettably did was jump into a match, and the reason it's regrettable is because I found out later that you could access the training mode if you just sat at a vacant station. With that being said, depending on how busy your current lobby is, you may not get much of a chance to train as there is no way to decline with them completely locking you out of your attack buttons to signal that a match is about to begin. The virtual lobby itself was surreal for one reason in particular. The main draw with Battle Hub for me was hearing and seeing the announcements of win streaks on this large screen-like display. Now the players that were announced didn't seem to be tied into the current lobby as I did try to search for them, and this became an instant hook for me because it is really bringing that arcade feel to online. If you have ever been to an arcade, you are often drawn to a cabinet like a moth to a flame for two reasons. Either someone is about to complete a feat unreached, or someone was amassing a crazy win streak and people were just stepping up to put an end to it. This to me is what's going to make the Battle Hub a standout, as there are already examples of players like Justin Wong that amassed a crowd of spectators while the next person stepped up to take him on during the beta. I can imagine this being a really big deal when the game comes out, and just thinking about it gets me really excited for what's to come. I also wanted to briefly mention the other attractions like the Extreme Battle Stations, which I did not pour much time into but found it to be an interesting distraction if you just wanted to take a break from playing the regular fighting game. There was also some retro gaming stations. On the first day, the action platformer Magic Sword Heroic Fantasy was available, followed by Street Fighter II Turbo on the next 2 days. One thing I noticed about the retro gaming stations compared to the other stations was the absence of a dual cabinet setup, which meant two-player mode is probably not going to be a thing, and that is really a bit of a shame. At this point, I was looking for lobbies with fewer players to get more training in, so I didn't quite get a gauge on how big the activity was on these other stations. So all in all, Battle Hub was definitely a mode that I could personally see myself spending a lot more time in, given there are probably many more additions to come on release day. So let's jump into mechanics. Street Fighter 6 is definitely upping the mechanics ante this time around, and it was apparent from the onset when it asked me to pick my control type. There are 3 control types available: Classic, Modern, and Dynamic. Classic is the old 6-button basics attacks with motion-heavy inputs that veterans of the game have become accustomed to. Modern gives you 3 basic button attacks, with the other buttons dedicated to special moves, throws, assisted combo, and new mechanics that I'm going to talk about in a few. With special moves, the dedicated button will give you access to one special move, and then you can use the directional control pad to access the other special moves, similar to what you would do with the command normal. The assisted combo button requires that you hold it down while pressing the basic attack buttons multiple times to give you a desired combo effect. I saw Justin Wong making use of this during the massive win streak, and thinking about it now, I wasn't sure if he was doing this to show the devs that just how broken this control type was, or was he seriously preferred using this. It was the default when choosing characters to play with online, so the developers are definitely pushing this, at least for now. Finally, there is Dynamic, an offline mode feature that uses just one attack button coupled with an AI assistant that chooses your plan of attack based on where you are in correlation to your opponent. The idea is to give someone who never played a fighting game a fighting chance, basically. I do think, if done right, this can certainly help with learning how basic attacks and specials are used in neutral, which is one of the more challenging things to master with fighting games, but I would really need to see if you can pull the attacks off manually, the same way you would in this mode, to really gauge its effectiveness as a teaching tool. But enough talk of controller types, let us get into some actual gameplay mechanics. Before we jump into the signature feature of Street Fighter 6, I do want to mention some of the basic mechanics first. Characters now seem to have what I feel like is a hybrid of V-Skill and V-Trigger combined into one of their special moves. I personally played with Ryu and Jamie, and in both cases the command was the same, and it would give them an enhancement. After looking through other character movesets, I think it's fair to say every character is getting some sort of enhancement, but the command itself is not a universal one. The Super Gauge is also back once again, but it is now only for super moves and nothing else. It is most definitely the alpha style super gauge with 3 different levels, but in this case, each level has a different super move, with the level 3 super being the cinematic super that was introduced back in Street Fighter 4. I know that was a lot of supers. In terms of basic attacks, proximity normals have not returned, and from what I've seen thus far, it feels like links also work the same as they did in 5, but I honestly did not spend a great deal of time with seeing if the one-frame link combos have made their return. There was also no mention of the wake-up system during the tutorial, so honestly I can't confirm if that has returned in any fashion. The special mechanic added to Street Fighter 6 is known as the drive system. At the beginning of each round, you are given a full drive gauge, pretty much giving you full autonomy to use it at your leisure. There is a caveat, however, as depleting the gauge puts you in a burnout state that, as you are probably guessing, can get you into very big trouble. The biggest trouble it can put you in is a dizzy state, especially if you get caught in close proximity to the corner. Now there are 5 drive mechanics that utilize the drive gauge. Starting with returning mechanics, we have overdrive, which functions just like EX specials of old. Next up, we have the return of parries, though they are not quite like you might remember from the Street Fighter 3. Parries are now a 2-button command, and more importantly, it can be held for as long as there is drive gauge available to absorb attacks. Now there is a perfect parry, but there were no details on what the benefits are to performing one. Lastly, for the old guard, we have the drive reversal, which is basically your alpha counter V reversal you use while blocking to help take the offensive pressure off you. In terms of new mechanics, there is drive rush, which sort of works like focus attack dash cancels, but without the focus. You can activate this mechanic by pressing the parry command or landing an attack while doing a dash basically. You can also use this if an attack is blocked, so it definitely is a way to get in for pressure or to extend combos. I start to get chills thinking about how grapplers are going to use this mechanic. Finally, there is the biggest mechanic of this title, which you may have already noticed in the trailers, and that is drive impact. It certainly has remnants of the focus attack, but it's not a charging mechanic. There is no getting out of it once you've committed, and there is a pretty good reason for this. As you may have already seen, you can counter an opponent's drive impact if you activate your own immediately after an opponent activates theirs, which basically absorbs their attack. Landing the attack does seem to operate differently based on the distance it hits from. Like near an opponent, it will put you into a crumple state, but if it lands further away, it seems to just knock the opponent back. Getting caught near the corner blocking a drive impact will break your defense. Getting caught near the corner in burnout will lead to a dizzy state. I don't know how the community at large is going to take to it. I just know, like, spectatorship wise, it is definitely going to bring out some very hype moments because it just has a lot of comeback potential. So that is all I have for gameplay mechanics, and so we come to the final thing on the list, the online experience. I'm mainly focused on the Battle Hub for online matches, choosing not to get into casual or ranks matchmaking, which totally slipped my mind given just how easy it was to sit at a virtual cabinet and just get a match. One thing I would like to make note of was an icon that you find on a player before requesting the match that would indicate a likeness and skill. Now, I really don't know what they based this on. What I do know is it was not very accurate, as I pretty much steamrolled players with this icon. My guess would be that my identifying as a newbie and not a veteran might have stabbed me at a low skill level, but that is definitely not a way that should be used to determine skill level at all. Before you started a match with an opponent, you did get a signal indicator, and for the most part, my matches were between 3 to 5 bars. During matches, details were given like frame delay, rollback frames, and they did show an accurate ping as well. The ping in my matches ranged from 20 to 109 milliseconds, and outside of one match, which had a ping of 38 milliseconds, I never once felt like I had a bad connection, game lag, or even inputs. I didn't even feel like inputs were delayed. I would dare say that this is probably the best experience I've had on the online beta thus far, and the last few I've experienced all did have rollback. So I think it's safe to say that this is pretty much my experience with the beta. I like where things are going so far with Street Fighter 6. I feel like Capcom is really setting a new precedent with this game that you have to be taking notice of if you have a fighting game in development right now. What they managed to do with the Battle Hub is just, I want to find the words to give it the highest praise because I feel like it's deserving of it. What is crazy about that is the fact that this is just one mode that we've experienced so far, and so I can't begin to think of what they have in store for the rest of the game. This really does feel like a return to form for the franchise, and it certainly feels like they are trying to generate as much goodwill as they can for their past missteps with Street Fighter V and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. So to wrap this all up, Street Fighter VI will officially come to market on June 2nd, 2023. Pre-orders are now available starting at $60 with 2 more tiers that are offering additional incentives, some of which have yet to be officially revealed. We do know the initial roster will be starting at 18 characters, a 2-character bump up from Street Fighter V, and all the original 8 playable, with an emphasis on playable, characters from Street Fighter II will be present, which I think is great. There was an unfortunate leak that has most likely revealed the first 4 characters announced for Season 1 DLC, and I'll give you a hint. Fei Long is not one of them. With all that being said, I really do look forward to seeing more Street Fighter VI, and June definitely can't get here fast enough. I do expect there will be more open betas leading up to the official release. My guess is Capcom is slowly bringing in more players a little bit at a time before they go full Monty and unleash an open beta to the masses to really put some pressure on their servers. So if that is the case, you might just see me back with an update to let you know what's new. Until then, folks, I wish you all the best for the new year, and this is the Core 3 from FightingGamesOnline.info signing out.